We were founded in 1933. My grandfather, Joe Gambert, got a loan from his mother that he was sworn to never tell his father about, and he was sworn to pay back. He started up a shop. As a kid, I grew up here weekends and summers, from picking up pins off the floor to spreading fabric and learning how to cut a little bit.
So today we're going to be talking about custom shirts.
They order 4 shirts. They want 2 of them to be untucked. They might cut them, 2-3 inches shorter than the tuck-in shirts, and they might order short sleeve shirts, and they might want sleeves that are cut longer so they can roll the cuff back and show some contrast detail. I mean, there's a million variables in every order. Your customers, sometimes they order 1 shirt, sometimes they order 20 shirts, but every order runs through our shop on an individual basis. Each customer is cut on a one-off pattern. You dress for the job you want, right?
Welcome to Thread Talks, where we stitch together tales of style and substance. Join us as we chat with industry icons, master tailors, innovators, and business experts. We'll discuss how to look and feel your best. Explore how fashion shapes our lives, the artistry behind custom clothing, and the deep stories woven into the fabric of our identities. Here's your host, Peter Roberti of Adrian Jules.
Super excited about our guest today. We've got Mitch Gambert from Mel Gambert Shirts. This is a real treat. You guys are, just been an instrumental player with our success in our business, and the families have known each other for such a long time. And what a great opportunity and what a great pleasure it is having you here on the show today.
Well, thank you, Peter. We do have a long history of working together, and you and I have got to know each other quite well over the last, I'd say, 15 years anyway. And you're certainly a big part of our business model here, and I think we feed off of one another quite well. So I'm happy to be sitting with you today.
Yeah, it's I actually, out of all these years that we've known each other, I don't know if we've actually been able to sit down and really kind of dig deep in some of these areas. So I'm excited about what we have to talk about today. So today we're going to be talking about custom shirts. So if you don't mind, Mitch, do you mind just kind of giving everybody a little bit of your background, how you got involved in the business, and what your story is, how you got to where you're at today?
Sure, of course. Well, we were founded in 1933. My grandfather, Joe Gambert, back in the late 20s, worked for a shirt cutting shop in New York City. Back in the 20s and 30s, every city had a custom shirt maker, had a custom suit maker, had a custom hat guy. And at the time, there was a void in the city of Newark. So my grandfather got a loan from his mother that he was sworn to never tell his father about, and he was sworn to pay back. And he started up a shop, and again, that was 1933. And over the years, it evolved, and just slowly grew. They bought a mail order company in the 50s where they really started tweaking, selling kind of to the consumer base, learning about pattern fixing and such. My father and his brothers all instrumental in growing the business through the 60s and 70s. And then over time, there was at one time there were 3 Gamberts all in the city of Newark doing the same exact thing, competing with one another.
Wow.
I joined the business in 2001, right after 9/11. Having lived up in Boston, trying my hand at my own stuff up there, and once 9/11 happened, I realized it was time to come home. So I've been at it now.
Were you involved with before you got involved in 2001? Were you involved at all? Did you dabble in the business before that or not?
Oh, as a kid, I grew up here weekends and summers. From picking up pins off the floor to spreading fabric and learning how to cut a little bit. Back in the late 80s and 90s. We used to do a lot of stock work for, big companies where they'd order, 2,000-3,000 shirts at a time. So I learned how to spread fabric that way. And, I completely grew up in this business. It's kind of in you, but I as I said, from 1992, I decided to move up to Boston and just kind of try my hand at my own thing. And, again, 9/11 affected what I was doing, and so here I am today. So,
so what's it? Just so everyone can get an idea of what it looks like. Where are you at right now? Like, what's it? How many tailors do you have? How many people are there making shirts? Like, what does it look like now?
so we're our facility is 16,000 square feet.
Wow.
We produce about 70,000 shirts a year. We have 105 people that work here. And it's there's a lot of moving parts. It's we try to incorporate something called lean manufacturing, even though it's all small batch production. So your customers, sometimes they order one shirt, sometimes they order 20 shirts. It's but every order runs through our shop on an individual basis. Each customer is cut on a one-off pattern and move through the shop like that. So it's a lot of moving parts for sure.
So I just want to make sure we understand this. So each shirt could have not only a different pattern, but also different details. Every shirt is basically different from the next, correct?
Well, yeah, you've got guys that, they want, they order 4 shirts. They want 2 of them to be untucked. So they might cut them, 2-3 inches shorter than the tuck-in shirts. And they might order short sleeve shirts, and they might want sleeves that are cut longer so they can roll the cuff back and show some contrast detail. I mean, there's a million variables in every order. It's a lot to keep watch on.
Yeah. So I just want to just pivot here for a second. So what is it? I mean, I'm sure you've seen different, body types and, physical attributes, all different shapes and sizes. When you're looking at a guy, what are the first 3 things you kind of look for when you're thinking about making them a shirt? What are the things that are most important? Is it the shoulders? Is it the neck? Is it, what are you eyeing up, I guess, as, when you're kind of molding or creating this pattern for them?
Well, before I even look at a person, I kind of want to hear what it is they like about the fit of their clothes, because while I might think a certain thing should look a certain way, what that user's experience is really dictates how it should be made. So you have some people who think a full cut shirt is the be all end all, and you got some guys who want a shirt that fits them like a tube sock, and that's what they want. And both of those types of fits present different challenges. So when you ask me what the most important things are, I think number one is collar, right? Because if a man's wearing a tie, he doesn't necessarily want that collar to be choking him off at the neck, but he also don't want it too big. So the fit of the collar is critical. If they're not wearing a tie, sometimes we'll make the collar smaller so that the shirt lays a little bit better on them around the collar, around the neck, so that it's not falling down out front down here on them. The shoulder posture. This area here is the most, in my opinion, this is the most critical fit of the shirt. Where these shoulder points hit. If you go too high, the shirt starts to bind. If you go too low, it starts to look sloppy. But the higher they are, the cleaner it looks. But again, the more binding it is. The lower they are, the more comfortable it is, but the more sloppy it looks. So there's a big trade-off there. And then probably the sleeve length is certainly critical. Guys always talk, well, I show too much cuff on when I wear a jacket. Sometimes the jacket's cut right, sometimes the jacket's cut wrong. But again, those 3 things I think really are the most critical points. And then, what we always look for in people is the drags and the pulls. If you got pulls going like this on a guy, or this, going straight up on a guy, they tell you different things about the way the people are. It's my father.
So you'll see those drags. Like if a guy's got different shoulders, posture, slopes, you'll see those on like a regular, if a guy's got a shirt off the rack, right? Is that what you're kind of saying? Or
you're always going to see the drags in some capacity, yes. But on a ready-made shirt, it's going to be much more prevalent than on a custom shirt. When you make custom, you're taking into consideration those things. A guy's got a low right shoulder, he's got a square left shoulder, he's got a heavy back, he's got a big full postured chest. It's those. I always say when a guy goes into a store and puts on a ready-made shirt, if the size 16 is too small, he just sizes up to the 16 and a half. Whereas with custom, he might need the 16 and a half body, but he only needs the 16 collar, or he needs the 17 body, but he needs the 15 sleeve because he's only got 31-inch arms. So it's all those little variables.
Sure. Yeah, I had a guy in over the weekend, and one of the things he was talking about was this button placement. So when would you like raise that or lower it? He wanted to raise it up a little bit. Why would you do something like that? How important is that in the shirt?
It's funny, but first button position has been a constant conversation point in shirts for 20 years, at least as long as I've been involved. Bigger men with fuller chests, they tend to like a lower button position because it allows the shirt to open up a little bit across their chest. Not for that John Travolta look, but just for the ease of comfort. If it's too high, it's kind of binding on them. But some guys like it because they don't like to show any chest hair, or they don't like to wear a crew neck undershirt, not a V-neck, and they don't like the neck of the undershirt to show. So there's a lot of, it all comes down. Sometimes it's about preference, but most of the time it's about customer's fit.
Oh, okay. So obviously fit is important. What about fabrics? Because I know the collection the collection of shirting fabrics that we have at our fingertips could, there's thousands of shirt fabrics that we could choose from. Sure. Where are these from? How important is it, or how do you decide what's going to be in the line? Like, what does that look like when you're building out, the fall collection here, and I'm curious, what trends you see for the fall collection is.
Okay. Well, to answer that part A of that question, when you build the line, you have to have kind of meet the taste levels of as many people as possible. So we buy, broadcloths, which is a lighter weight fabric, and there's different qualities of broadcloth. So I think bed sheets, right? You could sleep on 300 count bed sheets. You could sleep on 1,500 count bed sheets. One's just going to feel a little bit nicer than the other. Sure. But at the end of the night or the morning when you wake up, the 300 count bed sheets might look like nobody slept in them. The 1,500 count bed sheets are going to look like you had a wrestling match in it, right? So you have to think about the higher quality fabric sometimes and the lesser quality, if you will. Some shirts are not necessarily 8-hour shirts. So just because a shirt is better quality doesn't mean it's going to wear better. So sometimes a really high-end broadcloth is really only good for like a 3-hour type of wearing, versus a lower quality broadcloth is good for an 8-er because it's got thicker yarns in it, so it's a little bit more durable versus wrinkling up on you. So we look at things like that. We also look at,
what about, I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt. What about the wrinkle-resistant, shirts that you see all over the online and all over the internet? What's the story behind that?
Well, I'm not a big fan of those personally. First of all, they're over-treated with chemicals. So on a purely physiological standpoint, when we wear a shirt, we are heating that shirt up, releasing our humidity into that shirt, and then we're reabsorbing the chemicals that are in that shirt into our body. So non-iron shirts have a ton of chemicals in them, and most of which are probably not very good for our body. So I don't care for them that way. And there's also a big misconception about non-iron. It's the true iteration of that is that it's a quick iron shirt. So, in the United States, we're the only country that has a dry cleaner on every corner, right? But in Europe, most people iron their shirts at home. For not in major cities, of course, but for the general population of Europe and the rest of the world, for that matter, people iron their own shirts. So the non-iron is really about quick iron. So it's a 30-second press versus having to stand there for a minute and a half press and really dig into the shirt. So again, I'm not a big fan of non-iron. They don't really particularly launder well, especially when they're being commercially laundered. A lot of laundries set their temperatures a little bit higher than what cotton should be exposed to, and you get sometimes a bad result from the laundering process.
Gotcha.
But really quick, I just want to touch base back to the fabrics, Peter.
Sorry.
We try to be all things to all people, like I said. So we buy heavier fabrics, Cambridge Oxfords, heavy twills. We buy pinpoint Oxfords and Royal Oxfords. So you have to, again, think about the different wearer's experience. Some people like heavy fabric. Some people like fabric that's super light.
Okay.
As far as trends of what the fall is going to be, COVID changed the world on so many levels, and it's changed how the mills are producing fabric. Right now, out of Europe, what we're seeing for the most part is really clean, basic stuff.
Really?
I'm wearing a print today. I still love prints. I love shirts that have personality. And I don't think that will ever go away. But the vast majority of fabrics that we're seeing out of the mills tend to be very business type, very, very classic, small checks, thin lines.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's safer. I think that, fashion dictates how people behave. I think when people wear, you dress for the job you want, right?
Sure.
So when you are dressed in a, very clean lines, very, very traditional, very basic, I think people are going to tend to take you a little bit more seriously, per se, versus dressing super flashy, where people might take you as making a statement. And it's not that they're not going to take you serious because you're making a statement, but they're going to look at you differently in the statement that you're making. And they're going to probably think about how they're going to interact with you on what level. I think so. I think a lot of what the Europeans are sort of doing, it's also safer for the mills. They are, they sell a lot more, fine tattersalls than they do big buffalo checks. So
Sure. Do you mind explaining, so I know you have a print on, you mentioned prints. And I feel like, we've done a lot of prints over the past, year or so. How do you wear those, or how do you wear them? Could you talk to me a little bit about what they are and, how they've I feel like they've kind of really penetrated the industry. And I think that people are really drawn to them.
Well, I think, again, prints tend to be, they can be a big statement. And they can also be, more of a story to them as well. We did, if you remember last Christmas, we did the print of all my nieces and nephews and my kids. We made the shirt for my parents. So all 12 of their grandkids were printed on the shirts. And every time my parents wear those shirts, someone asks, tell me about that shirt. And it's a story for them to share about their 12 grandkids and where they all are in their lives. I think the way people wear prints, fewer, my friends in the tie industry are not going to like this statement, but people aren't really wearing ties these days. So I think the print sometimes can tell part of the story of the outfit as well. A big, bold print and under a navy blazer or paired with a navy suit, the print has some colors in it that are going to pop and bring that navy suit to life without having to use a tie. The old adage was 2 solids and a pattern, to mix and match in terms of how you got dressed. So the print can really kind of bring dull colors to life of, a pair of gray slacks and like I said, a navy blazer, and this pink and purple and green printed shirt makes that whole outfit really kind of jump. And then also, but then there's also the really fine, tight prints, the really small stuff, the little paisleys, the little geometrics, where from 5 feet away, it looks like just a solid shirt. But then when somebody gets up close to it, they say, oh, there's something more interesting going on. It sort of adds a little aura of this mystique to the shirt, if you will.
Sure. So Europe, they're doing a little bit more classic, some stripes and some real classic stuff, tattersalls. In America, we're still doing some prints, what it sounds like to me. I mean, where do you see it going? Do you feel like it's going to be, as we enter the fall season, is going to be airing more towards that a little bit more conservative end, or are we still going to be doing more prints?
We're, in the States, we're about a year and a half to 2 years behind Europe, right? So I think there's probably still another year of prints really being relevant. Again, like I said, I don't see prints ever really going away. I think people really enjoy them, whether it's for the contrast inside of a collar or for the whole shirt. I think you're going to see people dressing a lot more traditionally and safer. Again, based on what the retailers are going to start selling. The ready-made shirts, excuse me. I think that's going to be a much safer looking line element. I think the bolder stuff is still going to have a stronghold with the custom tailors.
Gotcha.
Again, you'll start to see more subtle stuff periodically and people asking for it, but I don't ever see that personality being taken away completely.
Okay. All right. I've got so many questions I want to ask you here. So it's a couple of the things I want to just bring, to everybody's attention, because you mentioned details and every single shirt is a little bit different. Could you just give us that at high level, what, from a button collar, what that kind of looks like? Because I know, fabrics are important, fit is important. And also I think details, like people also buy custom because of the details of the shirt and what they could do to it. So what does that look like at your shop? What does that look like? What are, what could, I'm just high level, because I know there's a ton of things you could do.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we love to do is double angle buttons. So like on my shirt, I do my first two buttons double angle, and I do the rest of my shirts normal, right? I think that's something that stands out to people. Some people like it because it has a functionality. You could open one, still keep the other one closed. The actual buttons themselves can tell a lot. A white shirt with a bold wine button, or
you could put any button, any type of button you want on the shirt.
Anything you want, exactly. The different color threads on the buttonholes. Think about weddings. The bridesmaids are all wearing a high blue dress, and then the groomsmen are all going to do white shirts, but on the sleeve facing button here, they're going to just do a high blue to match the bridesmaids' dresses. Little things that kind of tie things together. Company logo colors, hidden button downs. A guy never wears a tie. He wants to do hidden button downs. That's all it is, that the collar isn't flying away from him. The softness or the stiffness of the collar. Whether a guy wants covered buttons. I mean, there's a million variables.
Tons.
And custom signatures. A guy wants to put his actual signature on the shirt. The things like that. There are so many ways to personalize a shirt. It really is. It's boundless.
Yeah. All right. Last question. So I know, I'm just curious because I feel like there's probably been a ton of guys that you've come in. I'm curious because somebody asked me, because they knew that, in the shop that I was doing this call with you, the biggest guy that you've ever done and maybe the smallest guy. What do those measurements look like? I'm just curious whether it's a neck size or a chest size. What does that look like?
Well, define big. The biggest man I've ever personally encountered was Shaquille O'Neal.
Okay.
He had a 21 and a quarter inch neck, which is as big as some people's thighs. His wrists were 9 inches, and most people's wrists are 7 inches.
Wow.
He was just the biggest man. But we've made shirts. We have a washboard player down in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, and this man weighs something like 630 pounds.
Wow.
And he's like 6'8". And we literally had to sew two pieces together just to make the back panel for him. He was that big.
You fit him, and he likes the shirts, and he orders more.
And that, I saw on one of your podcasts talking about people and their experience in putting shirts on. We just had one of our dealer partners in Michigan who fit a guy who was like 520 pounds.
Wow.
And the man put the shirt on, and the guy, Bruce, told me he cried when he put the shirt on because the guy just never had a shirt that fit him in his life. As far as the smallest people, I mean, we've made shirts for your little guy when he was first born.
Yeah, 1 year old.
Baby shirts, we've run the spectrum. So
I think it's interesting, and I'm sure you see it a lot. Just what the ability to do something. It's not that far out of reach. Like being able to do stuff like that. It's easier. Or the custom clothing. I think that people think it's high cost or it's tough to do, or maybe there's something that's preventing them to coming into the store and making the first step. In reality, I feel like it's not. It's a lot easier than what people think. I don't know what's your opinion on that.
Well, I agree. I think that I think that the internet has a valid place in this market for trying to do custom, but that is not custom clothing, right? But you could buy a shirt off the internet for $39 and have it be custom because the sleeves are cut to your size and really nothing else about it. I think the personal experience, there's nothing like it. I think that some people have been maybe not taken care of in the best way, and they've maybe been turned off to custom. I think that there are some people who misrepresent what custom is and maybe are pricing it up because they think, well, you're getting my time and I'm fitting you and I'm giving you a custom experience, and I'm going to make my prices as such that they're going to price people out of the market. So there's a lot of things that have given custom a very unattainable sort of mark on it, right? But I think the reality is you don't have to buy a $600 shirt. You can buy a $250 shirt. And to buy a $250 shirt versus a $160 shirt off the rack, to have that $250 shirt might be the same quality. I think that there's some idiosyncrasies that are going to make it better than the off-the-rack shirt just by virtue of it being made in America and the way that it's made, but also the fact that it's made for you. And that experience is, you can't put a price tag on that. Again, it doesn't have to necessarily always be $300, $400, $500 shirts. You can get an opening price point. I think eventually people are going to want to elevate themselves and elevate their experience, but to get into it, it is an achievable thing. I think if you find the right people to work with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's interesting now in what the internet has done with the word custom made or custom clothing, and yeah, I think it's important that you have a relationship with somebody and making sure that they direct you, like you said, based on how you're going to wear the shirt, what's important to you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough, Mitch. This was awesome. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and it was super helpful, super grateful for our friendship and also the years that our family have known each other. So thank you so much. Well,
Pete, I think how much I appreciate you guys, and we always have a good time talking. So I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. Cheers, man. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you bet. My pleasure. Have a great day.
That wraps up another episode of Thread Talks. To dive deeper into the stories and expertise shared today, make sure to check out the show notes for more about our distinguished guests and the exceptional craftsmanship at Adrian Jules Custom Clothier. Loved what you heard? Don't forget to hit 5 stars, leave us a review, and remember, dress to impress today. When you look great, you feel great.